calling in the dance hall. A disappointed sound boy who has no double plates at all.
Hey, what's up, YouTube? I am Jimmy Sequence. Okay, so I'm here to talk up again about the size breaker that is generally required to play certain wattage, to play certain amplifiers to the max, right? So as you guys know, I'm using the CVR 4302, which is 12,400 watts per channel, right? I was using the 30 amp breaker. I used the 30 amp breaker on the bass amplifiers, which is the 3302s that I had. The 30 amp breaker worked fine with those amplifiers, playing fairly hard, right? When I upgraded to the 4302, which is 12,400 watts per channel at 2 ohms, you try to crank that thing up, it chips the breaker at 30 amp, right? I've been told by a lot of so-called experts that it shouldn't chip, right? I'm playing 220, 240 volts. So according to the experts, it shouldn't chip at 30 amp breaker. Well, guess what? I switched to the 40 amp breaker, and at, fairly high volumes, I haven't chipped the 40 amp breaker as yet. But I've been doing some research, and I'm going to show you guys what is actually required to play that amp to the maximum. According to the National Electrical Code, NEC, the guidelines are it should be 125% of the continuous load. So the breaker should be able to handle 125% of the continuous load. So for the, I'll put this onto the video so you guys can see it yourself. If you're using 240 volts, right, the calculation is 12,400 watts at 240 volts is equals 55.17 amp. 55.7 amp, right? That's according to the code. Right, at a 125, it will work out to like a 64.6 amp breaker, which is about a 70 amp breaker, right? You need like a 70 amp breaker to play that amplifier to its max. I'm using a 40 amp now. I can play it fairly hard, but if you're trying to max this amp and get everything that the amp has to offer, you need about a 70 amp. I'm using a 6 gauge wire now. The 6 gauge wire is perfectly okay for the 40 amp breaker. But if you're using a 70 amp breaker and you're trying to get maximum out of this amplifier, you're gonna need at least a 4 gauge wire to be able to get the amount of power that the amp is capable of delivering. I was talking to a friend of mine, someone that watched my channel and is keeping in contact with me about the amplifier. He likes the amplifier. He bought 2 now. And he was telling me that, he's been talking to people and they're saying basically he should be able to play the amplifiers on a 30 amp breaker. And I'm telling you, no, you cannot. You can play it, clearly. You can play any amp on a 30 amp breaker, but how loud can you play it on a 30 amp breaker? You're not going to be able to maximize the power from an amp that powerful on a 30 amp breaker. 40 amp breakers are good enough. That's what I'm using now with a 6 gauge wire. But if I was to try to maximize the amplifier to get like everything that the amplifier has in it, I would need a 70 amp breaker with a 4 gauge wire in order to be able to get that type of voltage out of the amplifier. So again, I was just talking to my brethren yesterday, explaining to him that I play this amplifier and I am not asking anyone. The CVRs need a lot of power, and if you give them the power, there's really there's no amplifiers out there playing wickeder than the CVR, in my opinion. Don't come for me, that's my opinion. If you give them the right amount of power, these things are crazy, right? So again, in order to get this 4302 to play to its max, you're gonna need a 70 amp double pole breaker to play 240 amp and get it maximum. 270 amp breaker to play this one amplifiers at max with 4 gauge wires. Okay, and I'll put this information on the video so you can read it yourself. You can do your own research if you think I'm just making shits up. But again, just from experience, I tried the 30 amp breaker. It works fine until you crank the bass up. When you crank the bass up, it chips the 30 amp every time. I have cranked it up quite a bit with the 40 amp breaker and it hasn't chipped so far. But again, in order to get it to play maximum output, you're gonna need a bigger wire for the input wire for the power, and bigger breakers. So that's my take. If you agree or disagree, let me know, because like I always say, I am open to debate. If you have any other information that is relevant to the subject, jump in and let me hear about it. But yeah, so that again, this is about the 4302 or any amplifier that plays similar amount of wattage. In order to maximize the potential of the amplifier, you need bigger breakers, bigger wires. So whoever is telling you that it's not wired correctly, whatever they say, because they have all kind of reasons to tell you why it shouldn't. Like I remember one time I was playing up in Belgrade, and I have a rack full of CVR, and I was chipping a 60 amp breaker, and everybody was like, well, it shouldn't chip. Of course it's gonna chip. I mean, it's a 60 amp breaker with 8 pieces of CVR. Of course it's gonna chip. And that was proven to be true when I took it off of the breaker and run it straight to the generator. It didn't chip all day. So I know these amplifiers require huge power in order to get them to play properly. Again, that's my thing, right? So jump in on the comments. Let me hear what you have to say about this, because I know everybody knows everything, and most of them don't know anything, to be honest. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next video.
Broken-hearted sound boy